All right. All right. Today is Tuesday, June 21st. It is 6:35 p.m. and this is a Finance Committee meeting. In attendance, we have myself, Council President Brian Wolf, Councilpersons Koss and Camera, Mayor Hughes, and our Village Fiscal Officer, Jeffrey Wilczek. First matter of business is to discuss the tax budget. Mr. Wilczek, you want to give us, you emailed out the document, which was very nice, and I have given it a perusal. Do you want to speak to it? Give us I don't know, the 10,000 foot view on that? You are muted, Jeff. Jeff, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Did everybody get the document?
I got it in my email, yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. The tax budget itself, this is just the start of the budget process for next year. This is not intended to be the budget for next year. The purpose of the tax budget is for us to justify the need to continue to collect the existing property tax levies and to participate in the allocations of local government money at the county level. The tax budget will also generate the official certificate, which places limits on the appropriations for next year. Now, that certificate can be amended between now and year end if need be. So I'd like to just walk through this fairly quick if that's okay.
Perfect.
First page is a list of our levies. And I want to point out that the 2017 5 mil levy is up for renewal in November. It is still included with this tax budget because we have a record of our renewal levies passing. I don't think there's ever been a failure here that I can recall.
Not in my tenure.
Yeah, okay. Moving on, next page, exhibit 1, which is page 2, is the general fund. And a few things I want to highlight with the general fund. I anticipate there to be a small increase with the property taxes. There won't be a large increase until the reappraisal is done next year. So income tax revenue, there's a lot of discussion about there being a recession sometime later this year or next year. So I cut back the income tax estimate $100,000. One thing that's good about government is if we do go into a recession, typically we won't feel it for another 6 to 9 months, just because of the way the revenues come in, which also means we're the last ones to recover if that is the case. So income tax revenues have increased significantly over the last couple of years, but I'm not going to play it conservative and go with $100,000 less for next year. So far, we seem to be on target for the $1,950,000 for this year. Okay. On the expenditures, with the rest of the revenues, they're anticipated to remain about the same as the last couple of years. We'll have a better feel for these revenues as we get into the fall and we really take a hard look at all the funds. But anyways, as far as the expenditure side, I've built in a 5% increase for the most part for things other than salaries. One that is a big concern, and it's based on what I've seen with a few of the bargaining unit agreements for some of the surrounding townships and entities, we're having to look at between a base and step increases of about 9% just to stay up with them for next year on our police officers. So I factored that in for the police. Otherwise, we're looking at, I factored in a 5% increase on the wages. I anticipate there to be an increase of about 10% on the healthcare side. So I've kind of built that in. Very fortunate, last year you had just shy of a 5% increase on your healthcare premiums. Very good. I don't believe that, well, I know it's not the case out there. We'll see what happens as we get closer to fall and look at this budget a little closer. A couple of things I want to point out on page 3 with the general fund, because these are a little bit bigger items. Down where we have the transfers and advances, there's a transfer in of $93,600 anticipated. The EMS vehicle replacement fund has cash in it yet that has not been addressed. So there was an attempt to address it a year or so ago, but nothing came about with it. So that is going to come back to general fund. But at the same time, we authorize it to come back to general fund. I'm going to suggest to council that you turn around and transfer it over to the a storm sewer project fund. My understanding that between the ARP money and this, we should have enough to cover one of the projects that's hanging out there. It'll give us about $240,000. Okay. As long as that's acceptable, that legislation will be forthcoming with, or at least down the road. There is also repayment of a $75,000 advance from the village facilities fund that I just took care of today. That repayment came about because of the bond proceeds from the TIF. The other item that's on here, there is an advance out of $215,000. That is necessary in order for us to meet our debt service payment on the TIF bonds. Everybody involved with the transaction missed that there wasn't a full year's worth of revenue to make the debt service payment. Half of your revenue went to pay MI. So we only have a half year's worth of revenue coming in. That advance will end up being repaid back over a 2-year period. So I will be asking council to authorize that advance here shortly. Fortunately, the debt service payment is not due till December, but I'll get that taken care of fairly quick here. I just noticed something. Excuse me a minute. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about, general fund balance is still increasing, which is a good thing. GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, recommends that a target carryover balance for general fund be equivalent to 50% of your revenues. That means your target carryover balance should be in the range of $1,250,000. Now, I want to bring this up as a policy going into the fall so that at least going forward, we have something to look at as to where we're going to keep general fund balance. You can spend the balance down depending upon what you choose to spend it on. But if we want to keep the balance or that target carryover at 6 months worth of revenue, we need to figure out how we are going to go about repaying, I don't want to say repaying, accumulating that carryover balance back. Okay, so we'll talk about that in the fall. But general funds balance right now, looking forward into next year, would end next year with about $1.8 million, which is up nearly $200,000. Okay. Any questions about general fund?
Just a point of clarification, I had thought in the past I had heard that the recommendation for carryover was more like 3 months revenue.
I've heard that one too, but more recently, GFOA was pushing 6, and I kind of cringed at that. So that's something that we can look at whether we want three months or 6 months.
Either way, it's a lot smaller number than what we have there. It's just how much smaller. And I know that in years past we had been carrying more than that because it was anticipated funds that were being held for anticipated projects, but that picture has changed. So, okay.
And there's
Yeah,
still
but
a number of
Huh?
there's still a number of projects out there too.
Also
Yeah.
true.
So, any other questions or comments on general fund?
Nope.
Okay, moving on to debt service or other debt service funds. Listed here, we have 4 debt service funds that come back into play. 2 new ones are the sewer phase 2 and phase 3. Those OWDA loans started this year. So the allocation or source of revenue to pay those loans back is the sewer surcharges. And that gets split between the operating fund and the debt service fund. I've allocated enough there to meet debt service each year, but I've also allowed for a balance equal to 1 year's debt service. So if there's ever a problem that arises, we're covered for a year. Waterline phase 3, that one is actually paid off this year. So next year we'll be looking at transferring the remaining balance, $17,600, back to the water line maintenance fund. Okay. On the next page, we have waterline debt service or waterline phase 4 debt service. Same thing here, although there's one more payment to be made next year. There's a small balance there of $16,000 that will also end up transferred back to the waterline maintenance fund. Okay. And the EMS vehicle bond retirement fund, that actually has $100 left in it. And we will have to look at the process to transfer those dollars and close out the fund. But I anticipate that happening next year. If we get it done this year, great, but we'll see. Okay. One of the things I wanted to note, and I don't know whether everybody was really aware of it, in 2020, because of COVID, OPWC, Ohio Public Works Commission, delayed everybody's payments by 6 months. So it forced the amortization schedule and repayment out another 6 months. And we're seeing that in what's taking place here. On to page 6, other operating funds. What I've identified here are basically some of our operating funds that come into play. Street maintenance fund. We haven't had any significant expenditures out of that fund yet, but I anticipate there being some projects that will come about because of the pavement condition assessment that is due to be completed here soon. And that should outline what we need to do project-wise for the next few years with our streets, so we give them the proper attention that they need. I included both permissive MVL funds because those are dollars that can be used for maintaining the streets too in some of these projects. We'll see what the report has and what it identifies as far as what kind of work we need to do. On page 7, MP TIF tax equivalent fund. That is a new fund that has come about because of the bond sale. And this is what I was talking about. This year we have $373,000 left to go into the fund, but we have $490,000 in debt service to make. So again, we're going to need the $215,000 advance here to help meet our debt service needs. And again, I anticipate repaying that over 2 years. Whether we divide it in half or we repay to the extent we have the resources available remains to be seen. That I know of, we're not anticipating any projects coming out of this fund just yet. So there may be 2025 before we could have some additional resources there for some projects. The next fund listed there at the bottom of page 7 is the Storm Sewer Maintenance Fund. Right now, it does not have any revenue. I have made contact with Mike Flickinger to start talking about the fee for the storm water fund. I understand there's some problems trying to be in dealing with the commercial property and how much the fee would be there. So I want to catch up with Mike Flickinger, see what we can do to move this forward and try and get a fee in here to cover the stormwater. Page 8 is the water line and sewer line maintenance funds. 100% of the surcharge will go back to the water maintenance fund now because the debt is paid or will be paid off next year. Sewer maintenance, those dollars are actually, again, we're splitting it between here and the debt service fund on it. But they both have a reasonably good balance to, cover maintenance and maybe some other major projects that come into play, but not a huge project. Okay. Page 9 is just a list of all other miscellaneous funds. These are just small funds that have little activity or may exist for 1 year or 2 years just because it's a grant fund or limited source of revenues to it. Okay. And page 10 is a list of what debt we have outstanding. Water line phase 4, like I said, is paid off next year. So is the Minerva Lake reconstruction, road reconstruction loan from OWDA. I'm sorry, not OWDA, OPWC. And notice that there are 2 sewer project loans, phase 2 and 3. They're 0% interest loans. So that's very helpful for us.
Mm-hmm.
And on page 11, that is what we anticipate the official certificate of estimated resources to look like going into 2023. Overall, there will be $11,975,000 on that certificate. Okay. In the last page, permanent improvement projects. We're required to kind of submit a list there of projects other than those financed by bond proceeds. And at least talking with the mayor, we've got a short list here. East Shore storm sewers, again, roughly about $240,000 in the American Rescue Plan, plus that transfer of $93,000 will help cover that project. The rest of them we need to look at a little closer and really begin to identify some resources for it too. Okay.
Okay. That was a lot of information. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
Does anybody have questions in all of that for Jeff? I know it was a lot, so.
This will accompany the resolution that will be read for the second time on Thursday.
Correct.
Okay?
And again, this is not our actual operating budget for 2023. This is sort of, again, just to say it in my words, our statement to the state, right? The statement to the state that says we are in fact an operating municipality. Here's our evidence. Please let us continue collecting taxes.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Well, that was the first part, and I'm not hearing anybody have any questions. I'm sure if they come up, maybe they can ask them. Are you planning on being available for Thursday's council meeting, Jeff?
I can be if you want me there. Otherwise, I was not planning on it.
I don't think that's the greatest use of your time. So if anybody does have questions, maybe send them to me and we can compile questions and get them to Jeffrey, or maybe the mayor can compile them.
If there are a handful of questions, I can certainly show up for a meeting and answer them too.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I don't know. That doesn't sound like we'll expect too many questions between now and then. So I wouldn't worry about it. All right. I know that this was the primary topic for this meeting. The other thing that has been brought up twice for Finance Committee to consider was Councilperson McNamara had proposed an idea of drafting some sort of resolution to cap resident capping the fee schedule changes to a non-arbitrary measure. Meaning so that if we were to change our fee schedule, that we wouldn't raise fees at a rate greater than inflation, I believe was his suggestion. Which, it's a thing. I have heard of this before. I guess, Jeff, I saw you sort of flinch. So what are your initial thoughts?
Maybe in some areas that work, there may be other areas, and it's just a concern I would have of limiting the increase of a fee. If we need to bump fees up to a point where we begin to try and cover our cost a little, that may exceed the percentage that may be allowed, that being proposed. I think it's easier to assess the fees that we charge on an annual basis and at least have some discussion about the increase to them, especially if one's, say, a significant increase.
Sure.
Maybe more than what inflation is. I guess I don't like the idea of placing a cap on how much it could go up.
Okay. My concern, I have a similar concern, but I think it's similar but different in that I don't have the confidence that our fees are entirely appropriately set to grow with a metric like inflation, right? We've, some of our fees could have just been set arbitrary. Like, I think before we could lay in that kind of a rule, we would have to know that our fees are working right and appropriate for today and all those things before we could look at that kind of protection for our residents might be. Ms. Mayor, you had a face, but it wasn't for us. Okay, she was just going away.
No, I actually think I do. I think maybe this is where my question is. I thought maybe that conversation was going somewhere else, and maybe I'm not thinking. I feel like our fees are extremely low on most things, and they do not actually cover the costs already. And that's correct. Let's start with that. But I can't think of a fee that, and again, maybe he's thinking 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but I can't think of a fee that we really, for residents, commercial, different story. But for residents, I can't see a fee that we would even bump up so much. Like, all I can think of is permits. So maybe that's where I'm out of line. But, our permits barely cover the cost of the code enforcement officer, Eric's, the administrator. I mean, it goes through so many different chains. And we charge $25 for most of them, or $50. And I feel like that is so low in comparison to probably any other municipality. So like he's saying, at some point, somebody may adjust those to $50. So obviously that would be double. If we set our limits to only being able to increase 5%, what would be the point? I mean, our fees are already so low. If we said we're never going to go over 10% or 20%, I mean, we're talking pennies. So So I guess maybe I was thinking there was something more to it. I thought, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but I thought he was talking more along the lines of pool memberships and all of like these different things. So I could totally be wrong.
That is also within the scope of our fees. But again, I generally feel like our fees are low as it is, right? Like we are not a municipality that's gouging its people on fees. That's for sure.
I totally agree with that. And I don't, and again, I'm only here for a guaranteed another year. So maybe he's concerned about after the fact, but I'm not sure exactly what he's thinking on all of those. So I think, I know he's not here right now. So, I mean, that would be my concern is our fees are so low. If we capped it at 10% or 15% or something, that's really, I mean, we're talking $2. We wouldn't even rate. Why would we bother? So I don't know. Maybe there was more to it. I was thinking there was more to it along the lines of other like memberships and things like that we wouldn't. But I don't know.
But even those, I think that
so
we are we are setting to market rates.
Mhm.
And if
Absolutely.
next year, market rates for pools goes ridiculous, I don't know that we wouldn't want to capture the additional revenue because there must be some reason for it. Like,
Right.
that's just what it is.
Well,
This-
chlorine going sky high or something along those lines, we can't, if you're going to say we aren't going to do this, and then chlorine ends up being X, you can't, I mean, you can put the pool in even more of a debt, but we wouldn't,
Right.
why, that would be hard.
Does anybody have any other thoughts on that? It had been brought up more than once in council meetings, and I just made sure that we covered it in a finance committee meeting as promised. No, everybody's real quiet.
I'm good.
The only other suggestion I would make, Brian, is that there also be a comparison of the fees that the surrounding townships and municipalities are charging
Mhm.
to use as a little bit of a guide.
Sure.
And see how we compare and use that as a little bit of a basis too, to decide where you want to go with the fees.
And I believe in general, we have done that. At least that's my understanding, is that in the most recent changes in our fee schedule, the village planner, who's been instrumental in maintaining that for us, has done, to my understanding, has done that competitive analysis.
Yes.
Maybe another thought we could entertain is some sort of an indigency clause or opportunity, right? If someone's coming in and submitting something for a permit and they say they can't afford the permit for reasons, then we could develop some sort of fail-safe. Because again, I believe Councilperson McNamara's intention was to do our best by our residents and protect them in any way possible.
And I completely agree with that, but not, I would just I would agree. I think we need to be cautious on some of we already don't charge enough for those, but I would
Right.
totally agree with that. I mean, if somebody, and again, I can't think outside the box, but if somebody's coming in to put a $5,000 deck, I would think that they could pay $25 for the fee to do a deck. But
That is
again,
where it
there's
starts.
probably something I'm not thinking of.
Oh.
And again, I'm not trying to be a jerk when it comes to that, but it's,
No,
I mean,
no,
I'm
you're
sure there's stuff on the fee schedule I'm not thinking about.
Yeah,
Right.
if there's associated inspections to go with some of these things too, we would at least want to try and cover our costs there.
Right.
right.
And I don't think we even cover our costs in there.
No,
I mean, sending village officials out twice on a fence or on a deck or something like that, plus all of the hands it goes through, people driving checks to the bank and, you name it. So $25 and $50 definitely doesn't cover. But we're not
Doesn't
trying.
either.
I mean, in fairness, that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to gouge them. We want them to be able to do these things, and we don't want them to go behind the village's back. We do want them to come in, get permits and do all of that. We don't want it so expensive that they're trying to do it on a Saturday, so we don't know.
yep, I'm with you. So those were my two agenda items for the finance committee meeting. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to bring up for finance committee?
I'd like
Yes,
to bring
Jeff.
one more item up. I did
do.
email a monthly report to everybody.
Yes,
Not sure if anyone had a chance to really look at it. Is there more information, less information?
I will be honest and tell you, I had not reviewed that yet.
Okay.
So anything I say, I would be making up,
Well,
but I can review it and give you feedback by the end of the week.
that's fine. If there's something else you want to see with it, let me know. We'll see what we can do and what's available as far as reports go and work it from there. I will catch up with the monthly reports and generate them for the first 4 months of the year and get the website caught up. Okay.
Sounds great.
All right.
And then Jason, I don't know if it's just easier instead of keeping everybody else on here, but Jeff and I had a brief conversation about whether or not we figure out if we are planning on doing more next year and shipping costs and all of that. Maybe we just need to, again, we know it's going to be 12 weeks or we're probably not going to get them this season. So you and I need to talk about that and figure out what we want to do.
Okay.
And then we are still working on getting an electrician. Jeff, are you in tomorrow or not until, I don't even know what it is.
No, I
Thursday?
will not be there tomorrow.
Okay, So you and I might need to sit down and talk about the electrician options on Thursday for moving those concessions out of the building. We've started getting some estimates and all of that. So I kind of want to talk to you about that again. I talked to Leah a little bit about it. And then everything else you should have the receipts for. Jason got all of the stuff to do everything else down at the pool. So, and Jason, I did talk to him about the doors for the men's bathroom, like the 200-ish, we can go
Yeah.
ahead and do that.
Okay.
And I think that was the main thing, but you and I are gonna, we're gonna have to figure out what we want to do on the other. And then
Okay.
the refrigerator, everybody, just so everybody knows, it has been ordered and paid for.
Cool.
And it's going really well. And then we'll have the safety meeting and we'll talk about all of that.
Excellent.
And that is Monday at 6.
hmm
Yes, okay. Monday at
And
6.
it is a Zoom meeting.
Yes, okay. So Jeff, if anybody has any more questions for Jeff, I know this is Brian's meeting, so I'll let him say it.
Go ahead, Jeff. Yeah, we can adjourn the what is this, Finance Committee meeting.
So
Thanks
I
for your time
will,
tonight, Jeff.
I will have this document set to accompany the resolution for Thursday, okay?
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We do have the public hearing for this scheduled, I believe, on July 14th.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay,
At 6:30.
hmm
And then straight
Right.
into the meeting. And just so everybody remembers, and I'll say this in the next 2 meetings that we have, I will not be here on the 14th unless I can Zoom in. And then same thing on the Saturday morning work session. I will not be there unless my flight is delayed. So we'll see how that all pans out. I'll either
Okay.
be at an airport on Zoom or I will not. So yeah, we'll see how that works.
Brian, are you thinking you're going to be able to be okay for meetings on Thursday, or are you going to be still quarantined?
Well, so
That's
that's
the
what I was going to ask the mayor. I was going to ask the mayor if we can move it to Zoom for Thursday.
So
Because technically, I think in my reading of the CDC guideline, I'm okay, but I sure as hell think it's a bad idea.
and I think, I mean, again, I don't think anybody really wants to be around you for a few days. I mean, just because
I
you
don't think
can't.
anybody wants to be around me in general, but if they can get away with at least one more meeting, that's even better.
That's not nice. Again, I think just because you can doesn't mean we should.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, here's the 2 options. We can Zoom you in like we did us, and I didn't have a chance to ask Jesse whether or not you can vote still, but I would assume, well, you should still be able to because it's through the 30th.
Mhm.
That said, we can do Zoom completely. It is through the 30th. I am not making that decision. I'm letting council make that decision, but it is legal through the 30th of June. And the only thing is you're basically cutting residents out of being able to comment or this or that on all of that. It's the second meeting of the month. I don't think it's going to be busy, and I haven't made anybody mad as far as I know, so we should be good.
I'm okay if it's just me zooming in, but I don't.
I'm
Okay
asking
with
the
a
rest
full
too.
Zoom. If it does go to full Zoom, I would like to change legislative to that too, because I don't want to
Correct.
run over to there and then run back. You also mentioned a work session. I'm looking at the Minerva calendar and I don't see a work session on the calendar.
Should be
Or
July
July.
9th.
Okay, I'm just looking at June. So that's
Yeah.
why you were talking
Yeah,
about next
I'm
month and I
talking
thought we had another one this month.
I'm
Nope,
more-
that was my misunderstanding.
Nope, you're good. So July 9th. Okay, there's 4 of you guys. We're not voting because we're not allowed to vote, but the 4 of you guys can decide whether or not you guys all want to go Zoom or if you guys all want to do just Zoom Brian in. And I don't know how to do this without voting, but I mean, I guess we're just deciding. It's not really a
We'll
vote.
do it
Can I
this way.
give
Does
my
anybody?
opinion?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, the cases are still rising. So I think it would be a better idea if we just all did Zoom, to be honest, just for safety. Just it's going back up a little bit, so.
Does anybody feel strongly otherwise? There you go. Zoom it is.
I know Dave takes this all very seriously after the 2 years he spent in the ER nurse position. So
Mhm.
I'm sure he's there, and Anastasia seems pretty flexible, but I won't speak for
Yes.
her on obviously.
Might as
So-
well for at least the one more that we can. Might as well get that last Zoom in.
So I will make that adjustment. I will have them make that adjustment tomorrow just for this particular meeting. I'll send out the links for everybody tomorrow when I get to work. And
Because we're
I'm
gonna
gonna
move,
end
we gotta move
recording.
legislation to Zoom as well.
Brian, end this roll. Go ahead and end your meeting. If
I-
you want. No, I
yeah,
mean, just
I
end
did.
it verbally.
It's over.